The Holocaust, remembering humanity's greatest failure. The Holocaust stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history, a tragic reminder of how hatred, prejudice, and apathy can spiral into unimaginable atrocities. From 1941 to 1945, under Adolf Hitler's Nazi regime, over 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities were systematically murdered during World War II. This is not just a history lesson, it is a sobering reflection on what humanity must never forget. Through this journey, we not only uncover the events of the Holocaust, but also reflect on the lasting message it leaves behind. The seeds of the Holocaust were sown long before the first concentration camps were established. In 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in Germany, propelled by a toxic ideology of racial superiority. According to this belief system, the Aryan race was supreme, while Jewish people, Romani, disabled individuals, political dissidents, and LGBTQ+ communities were deemed inferior. This ideology was not just rhetoric, it became policy. The Nazi regime created laws, such as the Nuremberg Laws of 1935, which stripped Jewish citizens of their rights, including banning intermarriage and denying Jews German citizenship. Propaganda flooded schools, films, and newspapers, painting Jewish people as enemies of the state. Through this systematic dehumanization, the groundwork was laid for what would become history's greatest atrocity. How did a nation allow this? It wasn't immediate, but rather a slow, calculated process that normalized hatred. By stripping an entire group of their humanity, the Nazis set the stage for societal complicity and silence. This silence became deadly. The Holocaust did not begin with mass extermination. It began with smaller, methodical steps that escalated over time. One of the first significant events was Kristallnacht in November 1938, also known as the Night of Broken Glass. On this night, synagogues were burned, Jewish businesses destroyed, and thousands of Jewish people imprisoned. Jewish families were forced to leave their homes and were crammed into ghettos, walled-off neighborhoods defined by disease, starvation, and despair. In cities like Warsaw, thousands perished in these overcrowded slums, cut off from the outside world. Life in the ghettos was one of incredible suffering, an early chapter in the terror to come. At the same time, the Nazis began establishing forced labor camps where Jewish individuals and other minorities were exploited under brutal conditions. These camps were designed not just for economic benefit, but also as part of the larger plan to strip their victims of dignity and hope. In 1942, the Nazis formalized their plan for mass extermination, grotesquely called the Final Solution. This was the blueprint for one of the largest crimes in human history, the deliberate, industrialized murder of millions. At the center of this operation were death camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor. In these camps, those who arrived faced unthinkable horrors. Families were torn apart immediately. Many were told they were going to take showers, only to be led into gas chambers and killed within minutes. Others were subjected to forced labor, starvation, and diseases that claimed countless lives. The efficiency with which these killings were carried out was chilling, a factory-like system designed solely to extinguish human life. The scale of the atrocities defies comprehension. In Auschwitz alone, over 1 million people were murdered. This included not only Jewish victims, but also Romani people, political prisoners, and others caught in the Nazi regime's wide net of hatred. What makes this even more horrifying is the complicity of so many. From soldiers who followed orders to railway workers who operated the trains that carried victims to the camps, the machinery of the Holocaust relied on countless individuals. This begs an uncomfortable question: how much harm comes from choosing not to stand against evil? While Jewish people bore the main brunt of the Holocaust, other groups also faced unimaginable suffering. Romani communities, pejoratively referred to as gypsies by the Nazis, were targeted for extermination. Between 200,000 and 500,000 were murdered, their traditions and families destroyed. Disabled individuals were subjected to the T4 program, a Nazi campaign of forced euthanasia where they were deemed life unworthy of life. Political dissidents, such as communists and socialists, as well as members of the LGBTQ+ community, were also rounded up, imprisoned, and murdered. Each of these groups faced unique tragedies, yet their stories echo the same chilling truth. The Nazis sought to erase anyone who didn't fit their vision of a pure society. These stories remind us that tyranny and hatred rarely stop with one group. The Holocaust serves as a grave warning. An unchecked ideology of hatred can consume us all. Amid the darkness, there were moments of courage and resilience. The survivors of the Holocaust have shared their testimonies, painting vivid pictures of despair, hope, and unyielding spirit. These stories give a face to the countless victims and remind us of the resilience of the human spirit. One such story is that of Anne Frank, a young Jewish girl whose diary documented her life in hiding before she was ultimately captured and sent to her death. Her words resonate with millions, a beacon of humanity in unimaginable circumstances. There were also acts of defiance and resistance. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943 was a powerful example of courage in the face of overwhelming oppression. Though the uprising was ultimately crushed, it symbolized an unwillingness to succumb to tyranny without a fight. Beyond resistance, there were those who risked their lives to save others. People like Oskar Schindler, who saved over 1,200 Jews by employing them in his factories, and countless others known as the righteous among the nations, stand as proof of the profound impact of individual courage. By 1945, as Allied forces advanced into Nazi-occupied territory, the concentration camps were liberated. What they found defied belief: emaciated survivors clinging to life, piles of unburied bodies, and mass graves that bore grim witness to the scale of the genocide. For the survivors, liberation was just the beginning of another harrowing journey. Many had lost their families, their homes, and their entire communities. The emotional scars ran deep, and the world would spend decades grappling with the implications of what had taken place. The Nuremberg trials sought to bring Nazi leaders to justice. For the first time, the term crimes against humanity entered the global lexicon, underscoring the scope of the atrocities committed. The Holocaust didn't occur in a vacuum. It was a product of decades of anti-Semitism, unchecked prejudice, and the failure of countless individuals and nations to stand against hatred. The haunting reality is that it wasn't inevitable, it was enabled. As we reflect on this history, important lessons emerge. It reminds us of the dangers of letting prejudice go unchallenged. It emphasizes the importance of speaking up in the face of injustice. Even in modern times, hatred and discrimination persist. Anti-Semitism, racism, and xenophobia continue to rear their ugly heads. By remembering the Holocaust, we commit not just to learning from the past, but to building a future where such atrocities can never happen again. The Holocaust is not just a historical event. It is a moral lesson, a human tragedy, and a call to action. Its victims were not just numbers. They were parents, children, neighbors, and friends. Their suffering is not just theirs to carry. It is a burden we all share, a story we are all responsible for telling. As we remember this darkest chapter in human history, let us honor the victims not just with our grief, but with our resolve to create a world where hatred has no place and where justice and humanity prevail. This is not just a story of loss. It is a plea for remembrance, vigilance, and action. For if we fail to learn from the Holocaust, we risk repeating its horrors. Today, tomorrow, and always may we remember